Let me ask you about one of your fellow Republican governors. Governor Walker in Wisconsin survived a recall election. What do you think the message is to Iowa for you, but also just more broadly?
Well, first of all, I have a lot of respect for Governor Walker. He did exactly what he promised to do. He inherited a terrible financial mess, and he could see that what the state of Wisconsin was doing was unsustainable, and that they had to get out from under some of the oppressive contracts the unions had imposed on them. The teachers union, frankly, was in charge of the insurance for the schools, and there was no competition, and the cost was horrendous. He changed all of that, and the result was they didn't have to lay off a whole lot of teachers, and even though the unions from all over the country came in and attacked him, threatened him, occupied the Capitol, and put this recall on the ballot, in the end of the day, he won by a bigger margin than he did in 2010. I did a fundraiser for him in Dubuque, Iowa. I thought we could raise $50,000 from Iowans. We raised $150,000. So people understand and get it, and they recognize that state after state has been hampered by these unbelievable costs. In California, on the ballot in both San Jose and in San Diego, they voted to curtail some of the excessive retirement benefit programs that had been imposed on the people of that, on the communities in that state. So I think people get it. I think they understand that governors have a responsibility to balance the budget and to attract business and jobs. And if you hamper the state with unbelievable, and by the way, the federal employees don't have these rights. The president can impose a 2-year freeze on public employee salaries, and they do have to pay towards their health insurance. So it doesn't make any sense for these public employee unions to be able to impose these kinds of things on the states. And I'm proud that Governor Walker and other governors are doing what needs to be done.
Is there a message for Governor Romney in the victory in Wisconsin for Governor Walker?
Yeah, I think it is a message that Wisconsin's in play. Wisconsin is a state that's only gone Republican and won elections. I think 1984 is the last time it went Republican. That's when Reagan carried every state but Minnesota. This time, I think Wisconsin could be one. Who knows? Maybe even Minnesota. But I definitely feel good about Iowa. I think Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all these states that elected Republican governors in 2010. And so all I have to do is contrast that with the president's home state of Illinois, with a Democratic governor raising taxes, can't pay their bills on time. They've got the biggest public debt, I think, per capita of any state in the country, and they have the most unfunded liability on their pension system. That tells you we don't want to follow Illinois' example. We want to look to what Indiana and Iowa and Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, where Republican governors are leading the way, making the tough decisions, and putting their states on track for growth.
Let me ask you a question about something you're trying to do here in Iowa. Everybody's trying to get a handle on how to improve this economy. You just launched something here in Iowa to help the unemployed get skills. Tell us briefly about that.
Right. This is a public-private partnership called Skilled Iowa, and we did this in conjunction with Bill Knapp, who's been the biggest contributor to the Democrats in our state. And Bill and I were working together on trying to do something about reducing the commercial property tax, and we talked about this, and he said he was willing to raise some private sector money to help people get training so they could become certified that they had the skills for jobs that are available that aren't being filled today because they can't find people with the right skill set. And so we're doing that. Our workforce development department is working with the private sector who's contributing to this. We're very excited about that. ACT has a program to certified people, and ACT is an Iowa company. So we're very excited about this. We think it's going to make a big difference, and it's a win-win for everybody. Win for the unemployed that can get the training and still get their unemployment benefits while they're getting the training, and then can have the skill set to be employable and have a good working wage, and at the same time help businesses find people to fill those jobs that haven't been filled.
Let me ask you finally here about the relationship between the states and Washington. There's been some discussion from Governor Romney about picking winners and losers with respect to the president, Solyndra, the most well-known example of that. But the wind industry in Iowa has benefited from some federal help. And I guess what I'm interested is your take on what role the federal government has in helping industries. Ethanol is another one. Give me your sense of that.
Well, first of all, I think when you're trying to reduce our dependency on foreign oil, it makes sense to encourage and assist renewable fuels. I was an early advocate for that back in the 1970s. Iowa was one of the first states to do something. I'm proud to say we lead the nation in ethanol production, we lead the nation in biodiesel production, and we're second only to Texas in wind. However, Texas is a much bigger state. Per capita, 20% of our electricity is generated by wind, and per capita, we're number one. So this has been very good. We did receive some help through tax credits. The ones on ethanol have expired. The wind energy tax credit, unfortunately, has expired many times, and it's about to expire again. I think it needs to be extended for about 2 or 3 more years while that industry continues to grow. I'm proud to say that when I was governor the first time, back in 1983, we passed a renewable energy standard that made it possible to grow the wind energy business. And 24 states have copied our law. So that makes sense. There's done some things we've done on the state level. We think the federal government should also provide some incentives. They shouldn't last forever, but those things make sense, and that's a lot better than having the government go out and trying to pick winners and losers. Provide this for everybody that's going to be doing it, and we found that's been a wonderful thing for our state. We're very proud that we lead the nation in renewable fuels, and that today we produce more ethanol than we consume in gasoline in Iowa.
Finally, in Washington, the approval ratings for the Congress and are terrible. For the president, they're not so great. People look to Washington and they say it isn't working. When you talk about places that are places where things do seem to be working, people talk about the state houses. Right. What kind of lessons can they learn in Washington from what you're doing here? Well,
I looked at what Mitch Daniel did in Indiana. While other states were spending too much money, he reduced the size and cost of government, focused on bringing more business and jobs to the state, and we saw Indiana do well. Then I watched the 2009 election, and I saw what happened in Virginia and in New Jersey. And McDonald and Chris Christie came in doing the same thing. And a whole bunch of us new governors from Pennsylvania to Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and other parts of the country too, came in with the same idea. Let's reduce the tax and regulatory burden. Let's focus on bringing more business and jobs to our states. We need the federal government to be on our side instead of working against us. I had a company in Chicago tell me, I was trying to get them to move to Iowa. They said, you know, Illinois' taxes are terrible. We're going to leave, but we're maybe going to go to Canada because the corporate taxes are now lower in Canada. When I was governor before, back in the 80s and in the 90s, Canadian dollar was only worth 65 cents to the American dollar. Canadian financial institutions weren't as healthy as ours, and their taxes were higher. Now their dollar is comparable with ours, their financial institutions are healthier, and their taxes are considerably lower. Their federal corporate tax is only 15%. So I think we can learn from Canada, not follow the European example of spending and getting ourselves into such a tremendous financial mess. And that's the way this country is going today. We can't afford 4 more years, we'd be worse off than Greece. And America deserves better leadership in that. That's why I think Iowa and many other states that went for Obama last time are going to go for Romney in this election.
Last question. How much are they going to go for Romney? How big is this margin going to be in Iowa?
Well, this is always a competitive state, and it's not easy for a Republican to win it. Last time was George W. Bush when he ran for re-election. He didn't win it the first time. He did the second time. I think this time we went for Obama by a pretty big margin, but I think a lot of people are very upset. When Obama was elected, there were at that time 112,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. Just to show you how it's changed, there are now 8,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats. I think that number is going to continue to grow. After the primary election we just had, when the numbers come in on that, I think it's probably going to be 25,000 more Republicans. I think Republicans are more energized. They recognize the future of the nation's at stake. Iowans are very abhorrent to debt. I was elected against a governor that had said, we're going to solve the state's problems by this big bonding scheme. It didn't work. It just got us more debt that we're going to have to pay back at the tune of $55 million a year for 25 years. Iowans abhor debt, and they see the President of the United States as miring us deeper and deeper in debt, increasing the national debt by over $1 trillion every year that he's been president. That's the wrong direction. And the Obama health care is also unaffordable, unsustainable. So those things all need to be reversed.
Okay, Governor Branstad, thank you so much.